This Worlds review is going to be sponsored by Acer, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave in the chat while I talk about it. So, starting with the group stage, ANX had a very dominant performance in group stage, going I think 4-2. They made it out of the groups, which is like the first wild card team to make it out of groups. So last 2 years NA hasn't made it out of groups, which is pretty sad, and we got H2K for making it out of groups on the western side. So feels bad for NA. In the group stage, Rox had a pretty poor showing against CLG and ANX, and it was kind of unexpected because Rox having like the best top lane in the world, Smeb, just felt very uncharacteristic. Usually Koreans just hard stomp their group, but ANX was able to perform really well despite the odds. And what this tells us is that not only that there should probably be more international stage performance or more international terms, it tells us that in group stages and best of ones or best of twos or just eliminations, like it's just not enough, because you could see that in the last game, even though G2 had an awful record of 1-5, they beat ANX on their way out. So it definitely didn't mean that they weren't a bad team. It was more about them underperforming on stage at the, I don't know, just having a bad day and such. Yeah, some EDG level sandbagging from Rox and some other teams. But CLG went 3-3, which is not that bad for an NA team. But you either win or lose. It's not about how bad. CLG might as well be the same as G2 in terms of getting knocked out. So that's it for Group 1. ANX also took a game off of Rox, actually, before we move on. You can see right here that ANX had 116k gold. Or both teams had 116k, which is an insane amount of gold for a game. This game was so ridiculous to watch. But this game, I'd like to compliment a PvP Steljo's, the Nidalee, because if you watch this game, it was like one of the cleanest Nidalee play I've ever seen in my life. Nidalee is broken in my opinion, but it takes a really good player to play her well. And to play on our group stage against a world-class team like Rox, that just makes it even more impressive. So if I had to give an MVP to this game, I'd give it to Nidalee. But yeah, crazy game. Crazy stuff. Alright, so I'm going to talk about Group B now. Some things to note about Group B was that SKT just stomped the group. And they only dropped one game to Flash Wolves, who are supposedly the Crane Killers, where the Flash Wolves always would beat Korean teams at Worlds, but this time around they went 1-1 against them. I feel like Flash Wolves had I feel like they underperformed, because at all other Worlds they seemed really good, but this time they just seemed really outclassed by the Koreans. I'm not sure why. SKT had a fairly easy group. I would have to say this would be the easiest group besides SKT, because it had C9, which was, wait, no, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. They had C9, Flash Wolves, and I don't know, some other team. I forgot what the last team was, but that all that matters was that SKT and C9 got out of this group, and then they played against each other, then SKT 3-0'd them, which was kind of sad to watch. So that was for Group B. For Group C, since G2 played really badly in their group, where everyone was kind of expecting H2K to play bad, and then they kind of showed up and just kind of crushed everyone except, I guess EDG. It was just like the famous EDG sandbag where they have like Mouse top, and he wasn't really their top laner before, I guess. I don't know, they just having like substitute problems for top lane. There's a wildcard team in there who we could have expected to do well because of ANX, but not really much to show from that. And then there was also the Taiwanese team. Taiwanese teams didn't show up very well at Worlds this year. Yeah, there's not really much to say about that. But yeah, you could see that EDG's infamously sandbagging again. So for the last group, the most hyped group of them all, TSM's group. TSM wasn't able to get out of the group. They ended 3-3. Against RNG, who also ended 3-3, but the problem here for TSM was that RNG 2-0'd them in groups, and so RNG moved on even though they both had the same score. Splice had an underperforming record. I mean, they did have the hardest group. I believe that Group D was probably the hardest group, where it isn't like the very number one team in the world is in their group, but more of teams that could be top four in their group. I feel like any one of these teams could have been top four for Worlds easily. I think they were that caliber, so I feel like Group D was very difficult for TSM to make out, but still not an excuse for not getting out. There's a lot of mistakes that we saw from a lot of people in general. But in the end, it's a team game, and World Stage has a lot of pressure, and that's just what it is. So Samsung Galaxy and RNG are the ones that made it out of this group. And even though TSM didn't get out of the group, they were able to beat the first seed in the group, Samsung Galaxy. So that kind of just speaks for NA a bit, where C9 made out of groups this. Oh wait, no wait, NA did have a team that made out of the group, C9. So NA had a pretty good showing at Worlds, in my opinion, compared to last year. Two NA teams went 3-3 that were stuck in groups, and the third seeded NA team made it out with SKT, which is a huge improvement from last year. I mean, it's better than 0-10. And then Europe did good too, or H2K did, of course. So that's it for all the groups. So here's for the next segment, which is quarters. Starting with SKT versus RNG. I don't know if you watched the match. Okay, I guess there's spoilers here. So SKT versus RNG. One thing to note about RNG versus SKT is that it was Bengi over Blank. Like, Blank showed up for groups, and then they had Bengi for the best of fives, I guess. A very crucial matchup for SKT versus RNG would be Uzi versus Bang, where Bang is an extremely good AD carry in Korea, and Uzi is an extremely high mechanical player from China. On top of that, he had the Season 4 World Championship winner Mata as a support, while Bang had Wolf. And SKT is just like, you know, the previous winners from Season 5, and then they also won Season 3, so there's that. As I watched this series, it was really inconsistent from RNG, because I feel like RNG is like a rock, paper, scissors team, where they have really strong players in certain specific roles where they just outclass the other player from the other team so much that they just win. But against SKT is just so solid all around that they were able to be more consistent. And Wolf was better than Mata in this series. Bang was better than Uzi in this series. And just looking at the gold deficits, like, it really speaks to the whole series when their best players are not doing good enough. But I did believe that RNG did have a chance to win. It just didn't show up here. It was really interesting how Bengi replaced Blank as SKT's jungler for this setup, or this series. So move on to the next one, Rox versus EDG. Rox performed a lot better in groups, obviously, because they lost to CLG and ANX, who didn't make it out of groups. But EDG is the most talking about inconsistency, I feel like EDG is the most inconsistent at Worlds, and it's not because of their entire roster, it's just because of their top lane. Basically, they had Mouse as a top laner who was apparently filling in for someone else or something, and you saw how Mouse did. He was like basically a worse version of Dyrus. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have played as bad as he did. I mean, I ulted a Olaf as Malphite, but I didn't die as much as he did, so that was pretty bad by him. And then they replaced him with Cora 1, which was the previous top laner, I think, at one point for EDG. And he did his best, considering he never really played in group stage. I feel like Cora 1 did the best he could, that where he wasn't there the whole time because he wasn't there for group stage. But I feel like as someone who just like filled in, I think Cora 1 did a much better job than Mouse. Even though he lost every game to Smeb, because it's Smeb. What are you gonna do? He's the best. So EDG got really unlucky with top lane. That's basically too long to read. Another noticeable thing is Deft versus Prey. Deft was a superstar AD from Korea, and so was Prey. I'm pretty sure Deft was on Samsung Blue when they were reigning in Korea the years before in Season 4. And Prey was one of the top 80s in Korea for a very long time. The only other thing to note about this match is that they had Peanut. Okay, never mind. I was gonna talk about Peanut, but basically all there is to say about Peanut is he just played extremely well, and everyone rocks is really good. It's like some obvious stuff. Um, so Cloud9 versus Samsung Galaxy. If Cloud9 was able to take the seed over SKT, they would have had a lot better chance against RNG. I feel like Samsung just kind of like
Thanks for subbing.
it was a really sad
loved
series to
having you
watch.
explain things. You were like the Morgan Freeman of League.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm not very good at explaining things, but I'm doing the best I can. There's not really much to say about this besides it's a standard 3-0. Samsung Galaxy is looking very strong going into semis. Just a note, TSM did take games off of Samsung Galaxy and Cloud9 didn't, so TSM, stronger team, Kappa, even though getting out of groups. One thing to note about this series that I really don't like is not really relating to in the games. I mean, of course, players on Cloud9 played bad, but I really didn't like that the crowd booed Samsung Galaxy. That was basically the highlight of the whole series. The fact that they booed them. I mean, I'm sure they had interviews where they didn't mind. I really disliked that because the only time that we've ever gotten booed is at, I guess we never really got booed in Europe, but mostly the crowd is very understanding and it's all in for friendly competition. Like I do not like everyone who booed Samsung Galaxy. I don't care if you're my fan or not. Just please don't. Like, just like it's really bad, dude. You should be able to appreciate really good teams, and of course, Korea is going to be the strongest region. But you should be able to appreciate good plays. Like the crowd was so heavily favored to Cloud9. Like, sure, it's the home crowd, but sure, I can't change what other people think. But for my fans that were there that are booing. I really heavily disagree with that. I think that's out of really bad taste. You do what you want, but I don't agree with it. For the last one, H2K versus Albus Nox, I was kind of expecting this because since G2 beat Albus Nox on the way out and the way they beat them, I felt like Europe, even though G2 went 1-5 and they beat them, I feel like Europe was a lot better than they showed because G2 gave up first blood that game and still had a very dominating game. I feel like Albus Nox played really well in group stage, but the thing is, when you win, no matter what you think, you're gonna get complacent. Like they went into the group thinking they were gonna lose, and they performed extremely well in groups, and they did great. They did better than 2 NA teams. Kappa. But when it comes to best of fives and figuring out the game, H2K just has more experience. They have extremely highly mechanical players. Their H2K's top liner is extremely good, and I know from experience. And also Forgiven is extremely good. And Ryu also played well at Season 5 Worlds, even though H2K lost there. So, and then Vander's good with Forgiven. And then Jankos is really good too. They're all really good, obviously. I'm just saying it because I feel like every single one of their players are really good mechanically, and that there's no weak link on the team. Usually at Worlds, you feel like there's kind of a weak link on the team, but with H2K, I feel like they synergize really well together in terms of mechanics and such. They're definitely the heavily favored team going into this, so I'm not surprised they got 3-0'd, but I wouldn't be surprised if Albus Nox had a chance to win because, you know, they did well in groups, so anything can happen. Basically, the whole thing about this series is that rest in peace ANX hype. They only played one team comp every game, and ANX then banned it out. And Jay's top working well for ORNAYDA. I think it was very questionable to let them have the same team comp, but that's good for hiding strats, so good for them. H2K had the easiest quarterfinals out of everyone, like, for sure. But their group stages was well earned, and so now they're going to semis. This is gonna be the hardest. Like if H2K wins against Samsung Galaxy, they're probably gonna have a really good chance of winning against Rocks Tigers and SKT because Samsung Galaxy is just like Kuvi is an absolute beast. Like the way like he wins matchups that he shouldn't be winning in terms of champions. Where wait no Echo should not beat Rumble Lane. Poppy should not beat Jace. We're talking about impact here. And then I forgot the last one was, but the point is Kuvi played out of his mind. I think that would be the biggest challenge to H2K, where their mechanics are really put to the test and seeing how they can perform on stage. So the question is, can the West make a showing and beat the favored team, which is Samsung Galaxy? Can H2K finally beat, we're not going to say the West because it just feels like I'm a salty NA fan who just wants to change it from NA to the West. Can Europe beat Korea? That is the question of this match. Jankos versus Ambition in the jungle. Forgiven against Samsung Galaxy's bot lane. Like, this is a true test to their by far mechanics. One of the contested picks that we may see would be Zyra because she's been seemingly OP at Worlds, and from what I've heard from several pro players is that Zyra's OP. Another thing is Forgiven doesn't seem to play Jhin, but Ruler does. So how that will affect picks and bans. This is probably going to be the simpler version of the semis before we go into Rocks SKT, because this is basically LCK all over again, except with one European team in it. For SKT, we got two really good ADs once again. Prey versus Bang. Prey being a top AD carry in Korea. Notice the trend here. Top AD carries in Korea going to other regions. You know, Deft, Imp, Piglet. You know, there's a noticing trend for that. There just seems to be a lot of really good AD carries in Korea, obviously, and a lot of really good top laners. I know it's something so obvious to be said, but I just say it anyways because, you know, people don't notice if they don't think about it. Another thing would be Smeb versus Duke. Smeb being known as the best top laner in the world from the LCK. I feel like Duke is still very similar to him, but what Korea breeds these monstrous top laners. They're just like insane. Like in solo queue, there are so many top laners in Korean solo queue that are extremely good, and the reason is because there are so many good top laners in Korea. They just play against each other and they just get so much better, while all the regions are all kind of really behind in terms of top lane. For example, when I was in NA, if I'm at the top in NA in season 4 to season 5, in season 4 I was really good. In season 5, you know, if I'm near the top, there's probably something wrong for our top pool. There's definitely something wrong for our top pool. When the best top laners in NA are like not going to Worlds for season 5, you know there's something wrong. Like I was like okay. I gave First Blood up a lot, but if I can get there, there's probably something wrong for a top lane talent. I feel like even today when I play solo queue, I just smash most top laners in solo queue, even though I don't play that much anymore. Anyways, moving on from that, Smeb versus Duke, really interesting. I wonder what they will pick. Might just turn out being like LCK. Another thing to note about these two teams is Peanut and Blank. They're both very new junglers, while Blank got a lot of criticism from the community when he was playing in Korea. And Peanut is also a very new and up-and-coming great jungler. The question is SKT going to use Bengi again, or are they going to use Blank? So that's going to be, I guess that's going to depend on their scrims from the opposing teams. There's really a lot to think about for this, but that's just a general overlook. Not going to go too much in detail. For the final prediction, I think... Oh, this is such a hard one. I feel like all of these teams had like such an easy time. Like SKT is obviously the favorite, and they just smashed them. Rocks Tigers was the favorite. They smashed them because they had bad top laner or bad top laner substitutions. Not that Core One played bad. It's just they had inconsistencies. Both of the Chinese teams had inconsistencies. TSM was, or Meteos even admitted in an interview that TSM was better than Cloud9. So if TSM couldn't get out of groups, then what chance did Cloud9 have? I mean, we're looking at stats. I'm not gonna say like I knew it the whole time. It's just it makes sense. Everything falls into place. It's like, oh, that it makes sense, you know? But then if it gets upset, then it's like, oh my god, they made it. They did it. We're so happy. That's why it's called an upset. That's why these are the favorites. For H2K, they had a wild card. Like I feel like all of these teams had such an easy time. Like even though either teams could win, like the way that these teams won, they just completely stomped them. And of course, all the Korean teams got out of groups. So this is where it really gets hard. Like even if someone went, I feel like this series is probably gonna go to like a 3-2 for sure. Like 100% these games are going to 3-2 because they have so many strategies, so many good players that it's going to go to 3-2 in either way's favor. But I'm just going to say SKT because no, actually no, I'm going to predict Rocks Tigers over SKT, and here's my reasoning. When you win in League of Legends, you get complacent. Let me give you an example. Let's say you won if you're a one trick player who plays maybe 2 or 3 champions, but you try one trick champions. If you win so much on one champion, you're gonna get bored and it's like, oh, I can win with another champion, and then you just pick the other champion and get screwed over. Like my last game, I played Hecarim, I got cheesed, and I lost. Happens. For SKT, not all of their players have won Worlds. There's only Faker, Bengi, I think Wolf was there last year, and Bang. They were all there. But Duke hasn't won a Worlds yet, so Duke will be hungry against Meb. But I feel like when you win, you just get more complacent. Apparently, Faker practices no matter what and just doesn't take vacations at all. So, I don't know, maybe Faker will carry them. But I give my vote to Rocks Tigers for this one, and that's why. And this one is pretty simple. I'm going to vote for Samsung Galaxy because they're the Koreans. They're the favorite team. I'm just going to vote for the favored teams. Besides here, I feel like SKT might have gotten complacent over the year. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just have a better coaching staff and better players and they just work really well together. Maybe they win anyways, but I would vote for Rocks. For here, I feel like no matter how you put it, no matter how good H2K looks, I feel like Samsung is probably going to win because Kuvi just looked like a monster. I don't know. Maybe H2K can. I feel like there's a very high potential for an upset. Very high potential. But I'm still going to give my vote to Samsung Galaxy because they're the favorites. I don't know if they can pull it off. I could be bullshit you and be like, I think H2K is going to win, but. And then you're probably going to be like, under what basis? I'm just going to say they're all mechanically very good. But the thing is that I see them on social media a lot. I don't know if being on social media empowers the players from H2K. Maybe that's just how they are. They love bantering and such. But I feel like social media affects your play a lot for either good or worse. And I don't know how that's going to do. If it affects them well, I think H2K will win. And if it affects them negatively, I think they'll lose. So that would be my deciding factor. But I'm just going to give my vote to Samsung because, yeah. They talk a lot of shit, but they can back it up. They got the mechanics. They're very good, and their banter is very funny. I was actually quite impressed with Forgiven and Reckless being very good sports about it. That's kind of what's really nice to see the jerseys. Of course, someone can be really mentally traumatized from that if one side doesn't show up, but they got the balls for that, so much respected. So for the conclusion, that's the conclusion. I don't know who's gonna win, but that's my vote. I'd like to thank Acer, the ones who sponsored this, for allowing me to host a Worlds review. It was not the most in-depth review, but I think we covered mostly everything.